Welcome to From Zero to Step 1, the full guide to studying in medical school. If you don't know me already, my name is Diego Navarro. I am a medical student at the University of Guadalajara, and I have this goal. I have a goal to coach over 100 medical students by the end of the year 2027, and this video is one of the ways that I am going to achieve that goal. I want to teach you today a full framework for studying, for learning pretty much anything in medical school. If you've ever had trouble remembering, if you've ever felt like you're working too hard but not getting enough results, if you just want to boost your grades while studying less, this is the video for you. This is a no BS guide, step by step, no general tips. This is straight advice you can apply tomorrow and you're going to get better grades tomorrow, I guarantee you. So first of all, respect to you because you are watching a full unedited guide on a topic that is, objectively not very fun. Like a lot of people don't like studying. They study because they have to. And, learning how to study is not a very fun topic. I try to make it fun. Trust me. In this channel, we try to make things fun around here. But this is comparatively less entertaining than other videos you could be watching on YouTube. So good for you for clicking on this video. This is going to help you a lot. Also, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I am on Instagram, Diego Navarro Med. I would be really grateful if you followed me on Instagram. So first lesson, actively avoid being like this. What do all these three images have in common? So this girl, she looks like she's a medical student and she is very stressed. This guy, he looks like he's also very stressed. He has a lot of books, a microscope. He looks like he's just frustrated. And this image, this is like very, very artsy notes. You probably know somebody that is taking notes that look like this. They need a full 24-pack Crayola package of markers or crayons or whatever just to make them look like this, right? They spend way too much time making these notes. What do these people have in common? They are going to burn out eventually. They're going to burn out eventually. Every single one of these people, every single one of these images have this in common. They're going to burn out eventually because if this girl, for example, makes these notes, they're going to spend way too much time. Oops, I just kicked my camera. They're going to spend way too much time making these notes instead of actually understanding the material. In college, that probably flies. In high school, that probably flies. In medical school, you cannot do that and expect to succeed. I guarantee you, I've been through this. I used to make notes all pretty and all like highlighters and cursive titles and just make them really, really, really aesthetic in my notebook, and then I went onto my iPad and just unlocked a whole variety of tools. No, I'm telling you right now, that is a complete waste of time. There is no bigger waste of time than making notes look like this because you're not learning anything. And the reason why these people are looking so stressed is probably because they made these notes like this. It's probably because they spent so much time making pretty notes and they didn't learn anything, and then they got their scores back on a test or on a clinical rotation or something, and guess what? They did very poorly. Why do you think that is? Because they didn't spend any time really understanding the material. So actively avoid being like this. If at any moment you choose vanity over learning, vanity, I mean like proof of, like making something pretty. If at any point you're thinking about more vanity than learning, then you need to avoid being like this, all right? So stick that in your mind right now. We are now going back to this, all right? So this is the full roadmap. This is the full framework to complete learning. So first, priming, seeing content for the first time. Basically, how are we going to introduce something to ourselves? A topic we see for the first time or something that we haven't learned yet. How are we going to see it for the first time? Number two, generating. So after we see content for the first time, how are we going to form strong context and understanding around it? Because to learn anything, we need enough context for it to stick in our brain. If you ever try, for example, building a puzzle without looking at the picture first, you probably wouldn't be able to do that, right? It doesn't make sense. You can't do that. But if you have enough context, for example, the image of the entire panoramic scope of a subject or the image of a puzzle, I hope that's not too confusing, then you will be able to form very, very good understanding. All right. Now, number three, encoding. Basically, how are we going to make this stick in our brain at a much deeper level. So building deeper knowledge that lasts a lifetime. So far we have primed, we have generated some basic form of knowledge with enough context so that we can learn other things easily. We are encoding, so we are building deeper knowledge that lasts a lifetime. We're basically making the knowledge stick, adding a lot more details so that we are very well versed in this topic. And number 4, practicing. How are we going to revise? We are going to revise so efficiently it feels like cheating. Every single time I apply this framework, it feels like I'm cheating because I never have to stay up late at night. I never have to look over my notes minutes before an exam. I never feel stressed. I never feel behind. I just feel focused, locked in, and I know that I'm going to do well in anything that I'm going to do. Whether that's exams, whether that's a presentation, whether that's a clinical rotation, it doesn't matter. This is good. And by the way, before we go into the roadmap, I want you to know, if at any moment, I struggle with this a lot. If at any moment you're thinking about changing something in your roadmap, in this roadmap, or in like your structure of studying, it's going to do you more harm than good if you just start randomly switching around. Like if you have this ADHD mentality of where every single time you want to over-optimize something, or you learn something on TikTok and you want to apply it to your study routine, I guarantee you the more changes you make, the more progress you're going to leave on the table. If you just stick to this, these 4 steps, do them again and again and again for at least like a week, you don't need to add anything more. And if you can stick to these steps for about a month, all right, then fair enough. You can add more steps because you've stuck to, the concept long enough so that you actually know where you need to upgrade some steps. All right. So with that out of the way, let's go. So priming. Priming is seeing content for the first time. Now, the first time you see content, you're probably debating in your mind what resource you need to use. If, for example, you want to use a book, you want to use Harrison's book, right? You want to use Harrison's Internal Medicine. You want to use a ChatGPT. You want to use a lecture video. You want to use your lecture notes, your lecture slides. It doesn't matter. Everything works. Imagine this. Imagine we have 2 people, right? And the first person spends the first 30 minutes of their study session just debating on whether the Harrison is better, or whether the other book is better, or the Goldman book is better, or whether they should learn from a pathophysiology book or from an internal medicine book, or whether they should read an article. Like getting into these, like debating with themselves on whether which resource they should use, right? This person is probably wasting a lot of time. Now, if we have this other person, right, who just says, I'll use Harrison. I'll use the Porth. And that's it. They're going to make infinitely more progress than the first person. Why? Because 1, they're not wasting time on, stupid decision making. And 2, it doesn't matter because information is going to be presented to you not in the same way, but in a very well-structured way anyway. Like the only reason why you should be switching around resources is if you prove to yourself that resource is not good enough for you. So for example, if I read Porth, pathophysiology, and I think, wow, I think it would be really useful if I had treatment, if I had etiology, if I had epidemiology, if I had clinical cases, if I had more images, all right, then fair enough. I can move on to Harrison's for that same topic, or I can maybe look up a video. But if you spend more than like 30 seconds on choosing if you should read a book or a textbook or a lecture slide or a video or a Ninja Nerd video or something, you are wasting your time. It doesn't matter, I guarantee you. So after that, we need to set an objective. So when we are studying, a lot of us spend a reasonable amount of time, choosing a goal to study towards, right? So maybe it's like 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day. Our goals for studying should not be time-based. Why? Because time is not an objective measure of learning. We should be basing our objectives on a quantity of topics or of material to go through, all right? Now, obviously, we can use time as a general base. So like if I'm going to study 4 hours or 2 hours or something. Yeah, that's good generally. But you should always be thinking in terms of topics. And speaking about topics, we break down topics in titles, subtitles, and headings in these 3 levels, and then we ignore the rest. The rest doesn't matter, at least for priming, right? So if we open our book, we should be able to quickly find the topics, the subtitles, the headings, and maybe some bold words or some tables. And on those 3 levels, does that make sense? Like, we should be able to categorize the topic in a title, a subtitle, and headings, and just break it down like that, okay? How will we do this? How would we actually do this? So we're going to take pancreatic endocrinology as an example. We have here the Guyton, I think you guys call it, the Guyton book of physiology. And basically we take all these topics and then titles and then subtopics, and then we start breaking them down into these main topics. So for example, here we can see that insulin, glucagon, and diabetes, right? So we break this down into these topics. Basically, they're like the big chunks of information that we have to know. We put them in this sort of map. Now, you don't have to do it exactly like this. You could do it on a computer. You can do it on a notepad. I just did it on my iPad because it's a bit easier for me. We basically just plot out these big topics, right? So anatomy and physiology of the pancreas, insulin and its metabolic effects, glucagon and its metabolic effects, and summary of blood glucose regulation. That's how it's structured here in the book, right? You probably want to use a structure that the book is giving you if you're not familiar with the topic, because you probably don't know how these things are going to interact with each other. Now, once we do that, we are going to look at the subtopics and the headings, and we're going to add them wherever they need to be added. So for example, let's zoom in here. So for example, here in anatomy and physiology, we have the acini and the islets of Langerhans. I think that's how you pronounce it. We have insulin and its metabolic effects. So we're going to be talking about insulin and energy abundance, insulin chemistry and synthesis, insulin secretion, activation of target cells and receptors by insulin, blah, 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 all this nice stuff, right? Oops, okay, there you go. Okay, there we go, nice. So we're going to be talking about all this stuff, right? So this is going to be important for us to be able to see a general scope of the topic, right? So we have something to basically make a tree out of and then add the branches. We know the context, and this is where we start to prime. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to learn everything in these subtopics, okay? That is actually a big mistake. If we just start diving deep into one of these subtopics or one of these big headings, we don't want to do that. We don't want to start like actually reading the topic, right? That would be a big mistake. Now that we have our branches, we want to spend a minute to read through each branch. So 1 minute through little branch. What I do, I just ask ChatGPT to give me like a 1-sentence summary of each topic. So for example, insulin and energy abundance. Insulin is secreted when glucose is high after a meal, right? That like a very, very simple explanation. Since insulin chemistry, let's see if I remember. Insulin is synthesized and as a pre-prohormone, and then a prohormone, and then the protein C, and then it's the amino acid chains are cut up, and then we have insulin, right? Like that's probably wrong, but you get the idea. And then insulin secretion. Is secreted when the pancreatic beta cells are activated by a action potential activated by glucose. Like really simple stuff, like 1 sentence max for each topic, 1 minute max for each topic. The main idea here is we want to be able to loosely define these headings, these like subtopics, so that when we start reading the actual thick material, the hard material, it's going to be infinitely easier because we have a main idea. When we go through the material, which we will get to that in a moment, basically we're going to be reading in a way where we try to relate everything to that 1 minute summary of each branch. All right, does that make sense so far? Good. Now let's see. While we are studying, while we are going through the material, we want to be able to make our own questions. We want to do something called forcing curiosity. When we force curiosity, we're basically just trying to make questions out of what we're seeing. So for example, with some of these topics, glucagon and its metabolic effects, I can kind of infer from the titles. Insulin and the metabolic effects of insulin, glucagon and its metabolic effects. Okay, are these like opposites? Do they have some sort of relationship with each other? What happens to glucagon when insulin is up? And what happens to insulin when glucagon is up? Like, I start forcing curiosity. Like, if I was a toddler, right? And I just start asking why? Just force curiosity out of everything you find. Well, maybe not everything, but make like 10 general questions. Start to help your brain think a little bit deeper about these topics without actually going deep into the material. So the reason this works is because when we prime our brain to start being curious, to get a general idea of a topic, when we start going through the material, we're going to start relating that thick, heavy, hard material to these general ideas and to our questions, which is going to make everything infinitely easier. It's going to make everything infinitely easier, I guarantee you, all right? Now that we have a form of general understanding of the keyword. What did I write here? Okay. Now that we have looked at like a general understanding of each of these like keywords, this is going to be very important. So we formed a general understanding of the keywords. So these are keywords or these are headings. We spend about a minute going through them. Now we are ready for this next step, which is make simple drawings or diagrams for each concept and use as little words as possible. Oh shit, okay. I'm gonna make a cut. I didn't realize we were, okay. So that is how we prime. That is why priming works. Now let's move on to generating. Oh, I forgot the emoji. Generating, forming strong context for understanding. So we have this map, right? Again, you can use literally anything you want. You can use a piece of paper if you wanted to. I use this app called Omni. I think I mentioned it here. Yeah, I use Omni. It's an infinite canvas app. It costs like $3 a month. It's really worth it. I love it. All right. So generating, forming a strong context for understanding. So we have this map, right? Every single one of these topics and subtopics, we made a general understanding of each keyword in that topic. So for example, a keyword here would be insulin and energy abundance, or it would be effects on somatostatin, or it would be regulation of glucagon secretion, right? So these are like key concepts that we want a very, very general understanding of this keyword. So when we're generating, we can go get, our book. We could start to open the book and we could start skimming through the chapter. All right, so we could start skimming through a chapter. Now we can start reading. You probably want to start this after like 10 minutes of priming, no more. If you spend more than 10 minutes priming, you're probably just wasting your time, right? So when you get into the book, you don't want to go through the hard stuff. You don't want to go through anything that feels like it's overly complicated. And the way that we're actually going to start learning, we're still generating. We're still like going through a general phase of learning. So the way I would do this, make simple drawings or diagrams for each concept and use as little words as possible. It's okay to use the book open right now because we're not copying word for word what the book says. We are making some little diagrams on a topic. So for example, here I have some. This is like my actual notes. They're in Spanish, but since, they're in... but because there's just diagrams and drawings, you can understand it, right? So this is my actual notes when I was studying pancreatic endocrinology, right? So as you can see, a lot of arrows, a lot of drawings, a lot of food, a lot of colors. It's really easy to kind of see the understanding, like my thought process. And there are very little words because I didn't go through the material very, very, very extensively, right? I didn't even go to like the tables or like the really, really fine print text. I gave it a quick skim, and then I made some sort of drawing or diagram out of it, all right? So this is probably the phase of studying where you can choose your resource if your resource isn't like giving you the information that you want to receive. For example, I probably wouldn't use Harrison's internal medicine book, right? Because it's probably too complicated. It's going to give me a lot of treatments and diabetes and a lot of stuff, right? I don't need to know that right now. If you do need to know that, then great. But right now we are not focusing on that. Okay. So make simple drawings or diagrams for each little concept and use as little words as possible. So for basically each, turn each of these little subheadings into a little drawing or a diagram, all right? Focus on making the tree rounded instead of giving too much attention to a single area. So as you can see here, I didn't go extensively into a single area. I could have gone really, really, really deep into, for example, how insulin is secreted. Like this is my action potential drawing, right? So it's just insulin up because glucose got into the cell. That is it. I'm sorry. I really didn't go into much more detail than that because I didn't need to. I just needed a really quick understanding. And if I would have gone into more detail, I probably would have missed other things in this entire map. So we want a really general understanding. If you feel like you're focusing too much on a certain point of the topic, then you're probably over focusing right now, right? So we don't want to do that. Now, while reading, if anything seems too complicated, skip it. Again, if anything seems too complicated, either change the resource or skip it entirely because it's probably not worth your understanding right now. If you can't understand how a little piece of information fits into the big picture. So for example, here, it probably wouldn't make sense for me to start learning about insulin synthesis and all the protein C and the 51 chains of amino acids and all these little steps to making insulin. It probably doesn't help me right now because I'm not learning about how insulin works and why it's important for a patient, right? That's how I want you to think about this. So if anything seems too complicated, you're probably just not there yet, and that's okay. Just skip it. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel stressed out if something seems too complicated for the topic because it's just probably out of the range right now. Start answering basic questions about the topic to make sure that you dominate a level 1 understanding. So remember how we made questions a little while ago? Close your book and then answer them in your own words. Like try to go through, explain it, and you can even draw some little diagrams if it helps you remember. If you've ever heard of the Feynman technique, this is really, 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 really helpful, but it's probably never been explained to you in a way that's actually helpful. The way you use Feynman is not, after you read something immediately. The way you use the Feynman technique is you make questions at the beginning and then you answer those questions out loud in a really, really, really detailed form, or at least at the level that you should be, right? So a level 1 understanding. This is to make sure that you know enough to go deeper into the subject, because if you can't give like this basic level of explanation, you probably aren't ready to go through the deeper material. And that's when you get stressed and overwhelmed and overstimulated, and then you need to go take a bubble bath, right? So that's the advice I want to give you, all right? Now, encoding. We are building deeper knowledge that lasts a lifetime. Now, when we go through the entire subject in a very general manner, now we can go back to the main points and ask why. So for example, why does insulin make cells absorb glucose? What makes insulin so special, right? How does it work? What specifically triggers insulin to be secreted? Which mechanism causes glucagon to be secreted instead of insulin? So like really specific things that help you understand better the entire subject. This is probably the most important sentence that I could give you right now for learning. Really specific things that help you understand better. So again, if it helps you understand how insulin is synthesized and then secreted, that is going to be really helpful. But you have to work your way up to that little minute level of details. If you just throw yourself to the deep end, and the first thing you try to study is how is insulin synthesized, you're going to have a really, really, really hard time. So remember what you skipped earlier? Now you can go ahead and go back to reading that. Oh, I froze for a second. Okay, now you can go ahead and go back to reading that little piece of information that you didn't really resonate with before. And if it's still hard, don't force it. Read other things that are still a little bit higher in your level, and then you're probably going to get better at that topic just because you have more context to really, really, really cement those hard ideas down. So repeat the diagram process again. So you think of like going deeper into the details as just a higher level of the topic. So we have like titles, subtitles, headings, and then details. Do the exact same thing. Repeat the diagram process, explain things in your own words, no direct copying. And if it helps, close the book and then explain it in your own words, like with the Feynman. You can even make your own questions here. I would still keep making questions. I would still use the forced curiosity technique at this level just because it is really useful. So like I would make questions while I'm reading, close the book, and then answer those questions after I finish like a chapter or a paragraph. Probably not a chapter, more like a paragraph, all right? Next slide. Oh, I lost my footing here. Okay. So now that we encoded successfully, we are going to practice. So we're going to revise so efficiently it feels like cheating. This is probably the easiest part of the entire course, of the entire video. So we are going to see. If you want to use question banks, past papers, ChatGPT generated questions, again, it doesn't matter the resource. Just start as soon as possible. You can even just use your own questions. If you can make or type out your own questions, that is good. If you've ever heard of active recall, it is probably the gold standard. It is the best thing you can do. Like if you've ever seen medical students just spamming Anki questions, this is probably why, because it is really, really, really effective. Granted, you did all this priming and understanding before. If not, you're just like brute forcing information into your brain, and that doesn't really work. This is my favorite way of doing it. I just ask ChatGPT this prompt, and then it makes questions for me. So I'm studying X topic in medical school. Give me 30 practice questions that help my understanding. Relationship building. Give me a sequence and priority of ideas. Evaluate concepts based on their relevance to the big picture idea, clinical application, and relevance. Make sure to include X topics and preferably use the same source you use. So if you're using the Harrison, ask it to use the Harrison book. If you're using a video, give it the link or whatever, right? To generate my questions. Also make sure the syntax is correct. This is really important. So for example, I use RemNo. RemNo is, for me, it's the best. It's better than Anki. I'll just leave it at that. It's like 10 times better than Anki. Not sponsored or anything. It's just better than Anki in every single way possible. The syntax is question, equal sign, answer. All right. So just make sure that you tell ChatGPT or whatever AI tool you use to give you the correct syntax for each question, and you should be good. Now, this is what RemNote looks like. So the way I study, the way I do my flashcards, I have to type out the answers, right? So look at this. This is in Spanish, but it doesn't matter. What is the difference between non-STEMI and STEMI in chest pain? I think you guys call it STEMI. I call it STEMI. So what is the difference between non-STEMI and STEMI? And then I have to type out the answer. Now, 50 to 70% of these answers will be wrong at something, right? So you will be wrong with some sort of detail when you're starting out. That is good. That is to be expected. That is a sign that you're actually trying, because if everything was just like really easy, like I'm going to give an example. In this question, I have to like really go into detail, right? An easier question would be, if the heart receives less oxygen, is there chest pain? Yes or no? Like, that is a stupidly easy question that if you have, questions like that, you're probably not learning anything. So you want to have questions that are at a bit of a higher level. Now, if you get them wrong, like absolutely you don't remember anything, either you didn't understand enough, or you probably just forgot. Like, you understood and that's good. You probably just forgot and that's good. Try again, go back to the material, but try. Like, actually try. Like if at the first second you see the question and think, oh, I don't know, you're not trying hard enough. You have to like force your brain to come up with an answer. Every single one of these flashcards, I never go through a flashcard that I don't type out an answer. It doesn't matter if the answer is complete bullshit. It doesn't matter. If I type out something that is good enough of an effort, all right? You have to just type out something, okay? Now, every single, space repetition app has some sort of built-in algorithm, right? So I don't follow them. I don't follow the built-in space repetition algorithm because you feel like you're never done. Every single time you log into one of these apps, you have like 1,522 flashcards ready for review. Oh my God! 1,520. How many do I have right now? I'm gonna, let's see. Ooh, it's going to look a little weird because I have my recording a little bit weird. How many flashcards do I have right now? Well, I only have 30 actually. I only have 30. All right, I deleted them. Oh no, I have 596 flashcards due. That is stressful. Like, if I saw this on a random Tuesday, like 5 weeks before an exam, I would stress out because I spend like 2 to 3 minutes per card because they're very intricate, very detailed. I would stress out. Like that would be hurt. That would be painful. I'm not going to do that. No, screw that. Instead, each topic, I rate it red, yellow, green. I almost forgot the name of the color. So red. If I get less than 50% of the questions right, approximately, like I don't think too hard on this. If I get less than 50% of the questions right, then I practice the entire topic in 1 day, so tomorrow, right? If I get less than 70% of the answers right, I practice the entire topic in 3 days. This might seem too high, this might seem too low for you. This is just like the general recommendation that I would give you, right? And if I get less than 80% of the questions right, I practice the entire topic in 7 days. And then you're done for 100% for at least a month. Like, you don't have to go back to these questions for at least 30 days. Now, you might be thinking, oh, but if you only study it 3 times, that's not enough for the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve, it goes like this, and you have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. Yeah, but you don't have time for that. You don't have time to go through each topic every single day. Right? You just don't have time for that. All right. So this is the way I do it. Just 3 times. If you get it right a 3rd time, if you practice it enough, you're going to be golden for the exam. All right. It doesn't matter. If you go through it 3 times, that's enough. If you go through it spaced out in intervals, like if you do it 3 times in an hour, you're not good enough. If you do it 1 day and then 3 days and then 7 days, then you are golden. The way I actually like to do this is here in RemNote, you can add names to the topic. So for example, anatomy, I'm just going to invent some stuff, right? I would actually put an emoji, probably red. I would put the emoji on the name of the topic, and then I would just change it. Right? So for example, anatomy of the sternum. Sounds fun. Let's say that I study the anatomy of the sternum and I suck at it. All right? So I would keep this red. If I study, oh no, I don't want to do that. If I study the anatomy of the sternum again, I would probably change this to yellow. Probably looks a bit weird on your screen. I would probably change this to yellow. And then I would just keep a mental note of, okay, I have to study this in like 4 days. And then if I study it again and I get really good at it, then I would just put it in green and say, okay, I need to study this in like 7 days. And then the way I would do it, once I finish studying that in 7 days, I would just put a check mark on it, right? You can have a notebook where you list the topics and then list the dates. I personally just go with whatever I'm feeling. I prioritize reds and then move on to yellows and then move on to greens. That's pretty much how I do it, all right? So you don't have to be super technical about it. I know a lot of people that like to be technical about it because it gives a little bit more structure. So if you really wanted to be technical about it, just make like a table. Make like a table. Let's see if I can draw. Just make a topic table like this. Toot, 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 toot. So this is like topic 1, and this topic 2, and this topic 3. And then you make it red, and then you add the date. So maybe this is like the 11th of some date, right? And then you make it yellow because you studied it a few days later, right? So this is like the 12th. And then after you study it on the 12th, you would have to wait 13, 14, 15 because it's 3 days, right? So you would have to wait 3 days to the 15th, and then turns out it's green because you are very good at that topic now, all right? So this is how I would do it if I would want to be really technical about it, but honestly, I just add the emoji to the title of the topic, and that is good enough for me. Usually, I've never had like a problem with being very, very technical about it. I find that it's just a way for me to procrastinate. So I just do this if I really, really, really want it to be like very technical. But 90% of the time, I just add the emoji and forget about it, okay? Spend no more than 4 hours a day studying. Spend no more than 4 hours a day studying. I am telling you, I know what I'm talking about. Okay, if you spend more than 4 hours a day studying, I don't care if you have an exam tomorrow. I don't care if the most important exam of your life is tomorrow. If you spend more than 4 hours of day studying, look, this is the returns, right? So each hour goes up like this, and then like this, and then like this. And then the 4th hour, it kind of just goes up a little, right? And then you hit the ceiling. And then you kind of get burnt out and then just stay here. Like these are the results that you get. See how they're not higher? These are the results that you get after 4 hours, right? So it doesn't make sense to study more than 4 hours a day because you just kind of get burned out. The only reason why you would probably want to study more than 4 hours a day is if you haven't studied all week, or if you have some really, really, really good habits. Like you study 1 hour and then you go to the gym for 1 hour, and then you study 1 hour and then you go for a run for an hour, and then you just do that all day, which like even saying it out loud doesn't really make sense. But if you want to do that, like that is a way that you can make it work, and you could probably get like a little bit more benefit out of it. Honestly, more than 4 hours, just a waste of time. Don't even try. I promise you, don't even debate this with yourself. It's a false sense of security. If you study more than 4 hours a day, you're going to feel very, very, very productive. I promise you, it is a huge waste of time. I would rather just sleep. Right? So that was the 0 to step 1 framework. I hope you found this helpful. I am on a mission to help more than 100 medical students before the year 2027. And if you're interested in working with me on a one-to-one free coaching call, basically you just tell me what the biggest constraint in your medical school journey is right now, and I just help you guide along with it, because I've helped a lot of medical students along the way. I have enough experience to help you, because I can probably help you with anything you need in terms of medical school, right? I have the experience. I have a lot of satisfied students that have said that working with me has been very, very pleasant. And also, I'm just a really nice guy. So if you just want to talk for like an hour, then that is more than enough of an excuse to book a call with me. All right. So if you enjoyed this video, I am very grateful that you are here still. If you're still watching, this is going to change your life. If you're still watching this, apply this every single day for the rest of your medical school journey, and you will be golden. All right. See you later.